Hey, it's your old pal Lucid Stew again. I'm in Salt Lake City. I'm here with Christian Lenhart, who is one of the co-creators of the Rio Grande Plan, which is a rail plan for Salt Lake City. I've come out here to talk to him specifically about this and partially also how it's going to relate to a video that I'm going to do for high-speed rail between Las Vegas and Salt Lake City, which you all have been asking for. Christian, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
All right, hello, I'm Christian Lenhart. I'm a civil engineer. I work on projects here in Salt Lake City and a few other places. I'm one of the co-authors of the Rio Grande Plan, and I've been leading the efforts to build awareness and support for the Rio Grande Plan for the last 5 years.
And just give us a brief overview of what the Rio Grande Plan is.
Right, the Rio Grande Plan, there's basically 3 pieces you need to know. The first piece is that we want a new train corridor through downtown Salt Lake City. The current one goes off around the outsides of downtown, and there's multiple grade crossings, and the big huge freight trains block those crossings pretty regularly, and the fast commuter trains can come through faster than some people expect. There's been fatalities at those crossings every year for multiple years. So a new grade separated corridor for trains to get through downtown is needed, and the Rio Grande Plan would focus on that. The second part is that the proposed corridor would go past the old Rio Grande Depot, which is our historic train station. It used to be our train station up until 1999. This would be the way to reuse that train station as a train station, the way it should be. And the last part is redevelopment of the old rail yards, which is the entire west side of downtown. If you can turn that space, instead of train yards, into an urban development, neighborhoods, business space, parks, and those sort of things, revenue generators, you would have enough private investment in the city to pay off the cost of the Rio Grande Plan, and then some. So it's a self-financing plan in the long run, and we think that it is the best way to make Salt Lake City a more urban, a more livable and sustainable place to be.
So completely unplanned and totally by coincidence, we've had a major development on the project since I got a hold of Christian initially to come out here and talk to him about this. So what has happened in the last few days?
Well, the thing that's happened this legislative cycle is that there is a line item provision in the financial omnibus bill. It's a bill that needs to be passed for the state of Utah to function. And this provision is that the Rio Grande Depot, the building itself, will be transferred, ownership of the building will be transferred to the University of Utah. Right now it's owned directly by the state. It used to be the State Archives building, but this bill would transfer that ownership away from the public, the state of Utah, to the public university.
So that isn't necessarily a deal killer, but it is an extra wrinkle and one more layer that you kind of have to figure out in the whole process.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't end the Rio Grande Plan by any means. It just makes it more complicated. And what it really does, and the reason that it's made us so worried, is that it shows that the elected leaders they don't have much confidence in the Rio Grande Plan going forward. If they did, they would have kept the depot to be used as the train station later on. So this is something that we hope we can use as a way to show our government officials how much support the public really has for the Rio Grande Plan.
So we were talking earlier while we were having lunch before the interview about the similarities in geography between Salt Lake City and Southern California, where I'm from, and how those impact the way that the areas are growing, the way that they are constrained by geography, and the increasing need in both areas for transit as an alternative to using the freeways, which are becoming increasingly congested both here and in Southern California. How does the Rio Grande Plan play into improving transit along the I-15 corridor here along the Wasatch Range?
Yeah, doing really good, we said Wasatch.
Wasatch. Yes. Yeah. So they have some challenges along the Wasatch Range where they're constrained by this geography, and the main way through the area is I-15. And because of that, they need to implement transit to supplement that. How does the Rio Grande Plan figure into that?
Yeah, right. So our transit network and the whole Wasatch Front is a very linear development. It goes up and down the mountains, and that means because we have only one commuter rail line, one very busy commuter rail line, it goes right through Salt Lake City. So a very large percentage of the people aren't going downtown on the train. They're going from one end to the other. They're going through. And if there's something that happens at one of those railroad crossings that blocks everything, well, then the train line has to be shut down. It ruins the reliability of the system. People don't feel like they can trust their trips to public transit anymore. But for people who are going downtown, the current central station is not an inviting place. It's not a place you would go to unless you need to transfer from one train to another. It's more a transfer stop than a central station. And by having a better central station, a place that people want to get to, someplace that is actually walkable to get to the rest of the city, it can boost the usefulness of public transit and just the quality of the experience. Instead of being put off the train on this empty concrete slab near the freeway, not a lot of people are going to put up with that. But if you go to the train station and there's services there, there's food there, there's even like a restroom or a drinking fountain, amazing. People are going to feel, yes, they're going to be respected. And so if you can have that kind of respect given to your passengers, more people are going to use public transit.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way that it works out here is that Front Runner is your commuter rail, and that is the only commuter rail in the entire area. We were also talking about this earlier. Utah's growth is very interesting, where this is a state with about 3.5, 3.6 million people, something like that. But this is actually, in absolute amounts, one of the fastest growing states in the country, not just by percentage, but by absolute amounts. And so Utah is growing consistently by about 500,000 people a decade. And
sounds right.
Yeah, and that probably is going to continue for some time. But this area is also running out of room. And so in terms of that, Front Runner is like doubly important.
If you're going to have people living closer together, more people living here in the Salt Lake Valley, there's going to be more demand for the commuter train. The freeway regularly clogs up already. It's not a reliable way to get to work. And so people are going to have to switch to some other way to get where they need to go. The Department of Transportation here sees the Front Runner, UTA, as one of their main growth avenues left. I've been to many conferences where the engineers at UDOT, the freeway engineers, are already bringing up the idea of a double-decked freeway. The bottom level goes south, the top level goes north, and they say that's what we're going to have to build if we're going to rely on cars. And that's crazy. That's so expensive and not a good fit for the kind of city we want to build. So it's going to have to be trains.
Yeah, and also in terms of urbanism in Utah, Salt Lake City is the urban place in Utah. There really is no other place. So in those terms, having the train station here functional and not a hindrance the way it is now with its at-grade crossings and kind of its poor location, you're talking about a multiplier here where because of the situation with Interstate 15, the Front Runner is already doubly important. Making it function is doubly important on top of that, and that being in place in the urban area of Utah, you have these orders of magnitude that you're building up to justify something like this.
Yeah, exactly. If the train station doesn't work and people don't want to use the train station, then they're not going to want to use the train. There is a real linchpin here that needs to be sorted out first. Order of priority that things need to be worked on. And it sounds like it's a big investment in Salt Lake City, right? Like we would need some state funds to go towards just the train station in Salt Lake City. But it's more than Salt Lake City. It's everyone who comes in or out of Salt Lake City, which is most of the population of the state of Utah will, if they're traveling along the Wasatch Front, will need to come through here in one way or another. So yeah, I think it's not just a city issue, it's a statewide issue.
Now, one of the things that is interesting about this project to me is that the grant that you all got to study this project is a Reconnecting Communities grant, which is not a rail grant. So just explain how that kind of figures into the whole scheme.
Yeah, I'm a civil engineer. I approached this first as a way to increase transit capacity, and I was presenting to the city council. This was back during COVID when they needed something to do during lunch because everyone was out working from home, and so they said, let's bring these engineer guys in and see how entertaining they are. And we proposed the Rio Grande Plan to them and said this is a way to boost ridership on the transit line. But they latched on the idea that this is a way to close the railroad crossings, to get rid of them. Because everything will be grade separated. You can literally take the train tracks on the surface there and just rip them out. And this is something that had been a political issue for decades. The east-west divide in the city caused by where the railroad tracks are. Also the freeway, but the freeway doesn't close public roads for half an hour at a time while the train goes back and forth and switches cars. And so to get the support of the city council, we quickly realized we need to pitch this more as a grade separation scheme, as a way to get rid of those railroad crossings. And from there, we were able to put together a grant package that showed that we believe the railroad crossings to be the biggest cause of the east-west divide. And so far, to my understanding, that's what the study has found as well.
Now, I'm not a native of Salt Lake City by any means. But for anyone not familiar with Salt Lake City, the way this entire area functions is that you have Interstate 15 on the west. You have this large rail yard just to the east of Interstate 15. You have the current station. A little bit further to the east is the Rio Grande station, and then kind of the downtown area. And the way this all works is that you have these flyover ramps from the interstate into the downtown area that go over the rail yards. And functionally what this causes is that the entire area west of the current train station is just like a wasteland. And so what would the Rio Grande Plan do with that land that is currently pretty much useless beyond trains?
Yeah, it's not a pretty way to enter the city, is it? On those great big bridges over the rail yards.
Yeah, it makes an impression, for sure.
It does. And this land is unusable not just because there are trains on it, but because of those bridges. Those are the main reason that people don't like that spot, because the bridges are loud, the cars come with their noises and smells. The bridges cut off access to the adjacent parcels, so that you can't have things like storefronts. Nobody's going to go there. It's very tight and confined, and there's dead ends. It's just not usable. But the bridges are going over the rail yards. So if you get rid of those rail yards, there's nothing left for the bridges to go over. And you can have those freeway ramps be at ground level again. You can even cut them back so that the freeway part of the ramp ends much closer to the freeway. And you get all that land, all that space back for the city to build on. And without the high-speed cars going past, without the noises of the freeway being right there, it's going to be a much more attractive place, and people will want to build there.
Yeah. So in this sense, the Rio Grande Plan really is a grand plan. It's not just a rail plan. It's not just a transportation plan, but it's like an area redevelopment plan. How much land do you foresee this freeing up for development? And roughly, how does that compare to the amount of land that downtown Salt Lake City takes up now?
Yeah, so the amount of land covered by railroad tracks is about 55 acres. And that's, that's a lot of acres. If you add up the parcels that they sit on, the boundaries where those railroad tracks go through, you get around 70 some odd acres. And you add up the acres of undeveloped land, just the empty plots that are just immediately adjacent to those parcels with the railroad tracks on them, you get about 120 acres. And that's 12 city blocks. Salt Lake City, we have our great big blocks, and each block is 10 acres. That's why they are the size they are. But 10 acres worth of downtown development is a huge amount of money. We had a study done by Utah State University. They used all the financial tools of the development and business school available to them, and they figured out that if the same kind of development could happen on just the 70 acres of land, similar to the immediate adjacent developments downtown, that would be equivalent to about $12.3 billion of private investment into Salt Lake City. And it comes with the tax base and everything. That's why we say it's a self-supporting plan in the long run. And like you said before, the Rio Grande Plan it's a train project. It has the aspect of building the Great Separated Corridor. It's a restoration project using the historic building again. It's a development project with the land being redeveloped for new uses. And so it's really hard to define to people what the main goal of the plan is, right, and what agency has the responsibility to take this seriously, which is why so far it's taken this many years to get as much traction as it has.
And one of the things that makes this project so interesting to me is that anyone watching that knows what I do, a big part of that is to just imagine how rail projects would go in places where they don't exist. And here Christian has done that and is actually also about halfway to bringing it to fruition. And so first of all, the number one thing that I'm interested in along those lines is we were just talking before we started recording about how I started making videos. Mm-hmm. What is the origin story for the Rio Grande Plan? How did that start?
Oh, well, my story's not maybe as long or interesting as yours. In college, I was a train host on UTA's Frontrunner, which is to say I had the conductor's duties, but without the conductor's paycheck. I would help people get on and off the train, especially people who need assistance with wheelchairs, that sort of thing. I'd keep law and order on the train when people fight, which happens late at night, and that sort of thing. That's how I paid through college. But I was one of the first people to take the train as a commuter, because the line south to Provo only opened the year I was there. So I was able to see the passengers the first time they got on the train and said, this is going to be life-changing. I'm going to take the train to Salt Lake City every time now. And then they got to Salt Lake Central Station and they realized, we're not really close to the places I need to go. I don't think I'll take the train anymore. And that stuck with me, like, golly, they spent all this money to build the great train, and in many ways it's a very, very good train. It just doesn't do that very last step of take the people where they need to go. And so, as I learned more skills as a civil engineer of being able to lay things out in plan view, I put my mind back to the idea of how could I solve this issue of making Salt Lake Central Station more walkable? How could I build better transit to get there? And just playing around with variations, one day it just clicked. Instead of doing grade separations to the train station where it currently is, what if we went to the spot where the old train station was, since that one had it all figured out already in terms of being downtown. And taking the trains there is a good idea, but taking the freight trains there as well, and having all that space, all that land open for development, I realized that that closes the financial loop. It's an expensive project, but it will pay for itself. And suddenly that goes from being a daydream to being a real thing. Like, this is possible. So if it's possible, I gotta tell people about it. It kind of felt like a duty, a responsibility. So I published a paper and I just put it online.
I know the feeling.
It felt like publishing. It was a lot more work than I don't think more than a dozen people ever read the original one. But thankfully, enough people did, so that we were able to start building support and discuss better ideas, refinements to what was originally in that paper, until we have a proposal what we have now. So it just step by step, we got to the point where we're a non-profit organization now. We have volunteers, we have a newsletter that's sent out. We've got people who go up to Capitol Hill regularly and meet with representatives. We're trying to build ourselves out as a real change-making organization, because enough people have caught the vision that this is what needs to be done.
What gave you the idea for the train box trench as a means of accomplishing the grade separation, as opposed to flying over the tracks or changing the way that the streets operate?
Yeah, as I was trying out various options, I did look at those things and see, based on UDOT standards or something, if we were to build a bridge like this, how big would that be? And decided that the issue isn't the roads. The roads are as small as they can be, because the standards change. They keep getting wider and wider. And, the answer is not going to be roads. So we have to do something with the trains. Can the trains go up? Probably not. Elevated trains aren't so great. I remembered the train trench they have in Reno, Nevada. I read about when that was being built, and even on my honeymoon when I was married in 2011, as we drove through Reno, I had to stop the car.
If that's not a train story.
I had my wife of 2 days take a picture of me standing in front of the trench.
Right now there's about 500 different viewers going, him too?
Yes, that's who I really am. Now you know. So yes, it's one of those ideas that was in the back of my head for a very long time, and I'm embarrassed how long it took to put two and two together.
Okay, so bringing it back to government, I kind of view my role in this entire community of transit enthusiasts to be imagining things that could possibly happen, or inspiring people to imagine things that could possibly happen. But the big question is, how do you go from that to something that's real? And like we were talking about earlier, one thing that makes Christian and the people involved with the Rio Grande Plan not unique, but particularly applicable in this case, is that you have gone about part of the process of trying to take your idea and make it real. So for people watching, first of all, if someone out there is interested in doing something similar to what you've done, is advocating for an idea, where are the places to start?
The places to start, well, in my experience, I can only answer from my experience, but I started with the community of enthusiasts, the train watchers, the people who go to these urban events and talk about what could be better about the city. Either that's an online forum or a night at the bar where they all gather together, and we talked about ideas. Get a base of a group of friends, at least, who you can work with and bounce ideas off of, because no one's got all the good ideas, and some of your ideas aren't going to be so great after all. So just make sure that the pitch that you have is pretty snappy. If you have an idea, it's always best to make sure the idea solves a problem that someone in government has. Because if you can say, here's a solution to your problem, they're going to pay so much more attention to you. The thing that we did in Salt Lake City with the Rio Grande Plan was the railroad crossing issue. Like you mentioned, the Reconnect study is a study about West and East Salt Lake, how to better connect the two halves. It's not necessarily a railroad crossing study, but because railroad crossings are the issue and are the things that we promised we can get rid of, suddenly we have a lot more support from the city council in moving forward with the Rio Grande Plan. And then there's been other issues that have come up. The inland port is a development in the west side of Salt Lake City. They want to be able to move their cargo trains from the west side of the city all the way to the south and then to the north as well, which means that every single time they have a cargo train ready to go, it's going to go through downtown. And they're concerned that they might not have all the access they need to send their new and arriving development, as far as cargo goes, to the rail yards that it needs to be classified in. So we were able to gain their support, a full letter of support, and a few good tips on who to talk to the legislature through them. And so forming the plan around an existing problem is been our avenue to success. And it's been eye-opening as someone who appreciates trains, right? Like, I think trains are one of the main ways to build a better city, have more dense development, be able to move more people in a more fair and sustainable way. But so far in downtown, trains have been just a problem. They've been railroad crossings. They've been blocked access to school. There's videos of people climbing over freight trains in order to get to work or to get to the high school that was near the railroad tracks. Still is near the railroad tracks. And the only options they've had are building pedestrian bridges to get people over at some of the crossings, but not all of them. And so we still have lots of footage of, say, an ambulance or something that stopped at a railroad crossing and can't get to an emergency that's happening. Yeah, so trains have been seen as a problem in Salt Lake City for a very long time, and this would be a way to not just get rid of the trains, get rid of a problem, but to take what used to be a problem, be it the trains or be it the west side of downtown or be it the east-west divide, and suddenly turn that into a very positive feather in the cap for Salt Lake City.
So we've mentioned kind of local involvement. We've mentioned how the state has gotten themselves involved of late, and we've mentioned the federal grant program that is funding the study. How is it working with these different levels of government?
It's been an education. There's some politicians who have avoided us at all costs. There's been others who have been really engaging. And there's more of them than you'd think. The people who get involved in government, I found, are a lot more sincere in their efforts to have good effects on the country than maybe popular culture suggests. And they're not hard people to contact. In fact, one of the things I've been most impressed by is how accessible city council members or state representatives, even federal representatives are. You are able to write letters and have them respond back, and even a phone call. Phone calls are scary sometimes, but that's a very good way to get their attention really quickly. And it's weird once you started working with someone and they start calling you. You feel, how did I get in this weird situation? There was one point where, because of Kimley-Horn Study, they had drawn lines on a map that say, these are the parcels we would need to take if we were to do all of this, X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. And one of the city council members called me into her office one day and said, I have a constituent here, they've seen the map, they are furious, you need to come solve this. And so I got called to the principal's office.
Yes,
I rode my bike as quick as I could to City Hall and found where they were meeting at, and then got yelled at instead of the city council members. So there's moments when you can build trust like that and say, I'm going to solve this problem for you. Because, well, I mean, we created that problem by having the lines drawn on the map through our study. So it's very strange to be engaged at a personal level with all these things. That usually seem like they should be done by governments.
So you mentioned the Kimley-Horn study.
Yes.
And this was a study that was done about the Rio Grande Plan by a third-party consultant.
That's right.
And this was done after you presented your plan to the city government?
That's right. So the city won in 2023 $2 million from the Federal Department of Transportation to study some potential solutions for the East-West Divide. And one of them they wanted to study, they mentioned this by name in the application, was the Rio Grande Plan. And so they needed to come up with a definition. What is the Rio Grande Plan? And so the city spent some of its own money to hire Kimley-Horn engineers to do what's a screening analysis, which is to say, is this thing feasible or is it not? And the good news we came back with was, yeah, the Rio Grande Plan is feasible. It works. And I said, well, of course it works. We're engineers. We know it works. Our professional reputation's been staked on this thing. But what the Kimley-Horn engineers were able to do that we didn't have access to were the stakeholders. They were able to talk to the Union Pacific Railroad and the other railroads that work in Salt Lake City on the same trackage rights, and talk with some of the property owners and put their wish list items in. And so Union Pacific, in their version of the plan, would get more tracks. UTA would have more space for whatever they wanted. And so it became a much bigger project than what we'd originally pitched. And so the price tag went up significantly compared to what we were telling the city council. And I would argue is not the right word, but we danced around the price for a long time until the strategy we decided on was, let's just accept it. The Rio Grande Plan is expensive, but it brings you or rather, it brings you lots of benefits in terms of its return. So the cost of the Rio Grande Plan, according to Kimley-Horn, is $3 to $5 billion, which makes it about as expensive. That makes it about as expensive as the Salt Lake City Airport terminal reconstruction project. That's a $5.3 billion project, and to my knowledge, the most expensive infrastructure project done all at once in the state of Utah. So we're not the biggest. We don't want to be the biggest, but we'd be up there. And in terms of that cost, you would get $12.3 billion in economic returns by developing that land. So it's a high cost, high reward project, and that kind of honesty is helping us, get more contacts on the Capitol Hill.
Now, one thing that I related to here is if you've seen my videos, a lot of the time I'm trying to find an inexpensive solution that doesn't do very much damage. And sometimes that's just not possible, or it's a little bit less likely. I normally kind of design things out in a certain scope. But the reality might need to be a little bit more aggressive or expensive or expansive scope. And so just, kind of talk about scope in general as far as the project goes, how it expanded with the Kimley-Horn survey, how maybe you disagree with that, but also just how there's a kind of a disparity between aiming low and aiming high, and how that interacts with reality in terms of what people actually want to do.
First off, I really like the way you approach your high-speed rail proposal videos, and as an engineer, I'm always amazed your cost estimates are so spot on.
Well,
I like watching the channel.
That's assuming they're spot on.
I mean, costs go up and down based on so many different local and political factors, but in terms of if this project were to be transported, picked out of this economic environment, put here, you do your homework. I'm impressed.
Thank you.
I like watching your videos.
You heard that officially endorsed.
Yep, endorsed by the Rio Grande Plan. But in terms of the scope, one of the things that I was talking before, the Kimley-Horn plan, how it adds more into the project than we originally pitched. One of the things it did was increase the number of railroad crossings that could be closed because they made the grade separation parts, the buried trench, or the train box as we call it. They made that about twice as long as we originally pitched. Again, it's just, we had pitched something that we thought would be the best from a transit point of view. The city wanted something that was best from a politics point of view. And if you're going to close some grade crossings and not others, that leaves some stakeholders upset. And so we needed to find a way to make the Rio Grande Plan big enough to include all the railroad crossings that are, on the bad list in the city, which is basically all of them in the downtown area. So we had originally pitched the 4 railroad crossings that the commuter trains take, but now we're up to 8, potentially 9 railroad crossings that we need to close. That's why we are talking more now about phases, about bite it in smaller chunks. The first bit along the Rio Grande, the first bit along the street called 500 West near the Rio Grande Depot would close several railroad crossings, but not all of them. It would put us in a good position to move forward next with several others, and that would make the Rio Grande Plan more accessible in terms of paying for it. Again, you just need to be able to take feedback from all the sources you're getting from, because everyone's got different needs, and I mean, we live in a democracy. Everyone's got to be able to approve what you do. And one of the things that I like best about the Rio Grande Plan, why I'm so invested in it and focused on making it work, is that I don't think there really is a negative side beside the cost. There isn't a landowner who's going to have to lose, their life savings for everything because of this. We're not going to have to tear down some buildings, or residential buildings anyway, to make this work. There's a few industrial buildings, some storage containers that need to go. But there's no real boogeyman that we have to fight. We're not taking space from someone else. We're creating new space below the city for the trains to go in. And it's the closest I've seen to a kind of a magic bullet for making the city better. Because what's the downside to it? It's just the cost. Well, you're going to get more money later, so you just need to find this short period where you're paying into the Rio Grande Plan, then it will start paying you back. And I mean, that's such a compelling idea, I think.
Okay, so one thing that you've encountered through this process is that, and I can relate to this as well, everyone has an opinion about what should be done, and that's good. You want to hear everyone's opinion, but kind of the product of that is you end up with a lot of alternative ideas and different ways of doing things, and obviously at some point you have to focus on one thing that you're going to do. And so what are just your views on coming down to that point of focus, but also being flexible in listening to other people's perspectives and ideas that maybe things you hadn't thought of that are actually good ideas?
Yeah, I mean, there are many things that I pitched in the original version that aren't in there today, and there's some things that are in there now, but they weren't then. Different ways that the freeway ramps would go in different directions, or the amount of tracks that we're talking about. And all of that stuff, I mean, little details can remain little details. We can keep things in, say, Schrodinger's box, where we have, 2 tracks or 3 tracks. How many are in the train box? We don't know until we open it, until we build it. We can argue about that later. But there are some ideas that people will pitch and be very in love with their own ideas of, the tracks need to be right here instead of over there. I did my best in a different series of videos on my channel to go through what the actual implications of that are, because not everyone's an engineer, not everyone's able to get a very good price estimate for a high-speed rail or a train box. And so if we could just talk about, if we go with this solution, then that's the consequence, and we have that conversation, and we say that we're doing this in good faith, well, then people will understand, I didn't realize all the implications. And we've been able to take some people who came at us with certain ideas.
Whatever he's about to say, I can absolutely relate to it.
I won't be specific here. This has happened too many times. I don't want to call out people's names, but people who were once antagonistic are at least tepid allies now, and they understand that we're trying to solve problems, and we do hear their voices. That's probably the best advice. Just listen. Take you some time, understand where someone's coming from, see if your plan, your alternative addresses their concern in a reasonable way. How can it be made to address their concern in a reasonable way? Whatever we need to do, we've got to build alliances and say, your idea is good. Let's make this idea as much like yours as we can, and then let's work together at least. Because without people working together, we've avoided factionalism and schism so far in Salt Lake City, but we've got to keep focusing on what unites us, the main goals of eliminating railroad crossings, of restoring the Rio Grande station. Those are the things that we hang our hat on every time. Even if we keep our differences, those are the goals we agree on. So the overarching goal is what's kept us around. And I mean, the Rio Grande Depot is such a fantastic symbol of that. That's why we call it the Rio Grande Plan. It's more than just a train station. The plan is still a good idea, even if we don't have the train station building itself. But the goals of it that the train station symbolizes, it's a great rallying point to keep us unified.
So, along the lines of flexibility and considering alternatives, you had this series of videos where you discussed various alternatives, and one in there that you had that piqued my interest was this Union Pacific station alternative. Now, obviously, if your alternative doesn't utilize the Rio Grande Depot, this is a bit of a different proposition. But you just talk about the Union Pacific option as it relates to that topic of listening to new ideas and being flexible enough to consider something, even if it uses a different station than you had originally intended. And also, take an opportunity there to discuss why you think that the Union Pacific option actually doesn't work as well as the Rio Grande Plan.
Sure, yeah. First, in Salt Lake City, we're very lucky we have two big historic train stations. One was built by the Union Pacific Railroad, and the other was built by their competitor, the Denver Rio Grande. And the Rio Grande Depot came second, and was owned by the Goulds, the millionaires back then. And they had a chip on their shoulder. They said, what did it cost to build the Union Pacific Depot? Oh, that cost $300,000. Well, ours is now $700,000 that we're going to spend on the Rio Grande Depot. And so it's twice as big. It's a more impressive building. But it's not quite in the same part of downtown as the Union Pacific is. And a lot of people who come to us said, why don't you use the Union Pacific Depot? And in fact, for a very long time, I'm going to bring my wife into this video for the second time. It took her about 4 or 5 years before she realized I wasn't talking about the Union Pacific Depot downtown. I was talking about some other train station she'd never seen before. So the Rio Grande Depot is built on 500 West, and the Union Pacific Depot is built just a block the other way on 400 West. Which is to say that the main corridor for trains that we've been pitching along 500 West would be about a block away from the Union Pacific Depot. The Union Pacific Depot is owned right now by the Gateway. It's a kind of shopping mall development built on the old Union Pacific Railroad yards. And the historic building uses a hotel now. The main lobby is still open to the public. It's a public right-of-way. You can go in there even if you aren't a hotel guest. It's great. Go in there, have a look around. It's an amazing building. But it's smaller than the Rio Grande Depot. It's about a block away. So if we were to use that as a train station again, you'd have to build some kind of connection to get to the trains, which again, a block worth of passage, a couple hundred feet through the shopping mall that's existing there would be a little harder to do.
And as we've discussed several times before this video, Salt Lake City has big blocks.
Yes. Yeah, we walked here from the central station, and I think you have to walk it you have to see it to believe it.
At this point, we ran into technical issues. I accidentally switched my GoPro to time-lapse mode. What would a Lucid Stew video be without some sort of snafu? Christian and I talked about the Rio Grande Plan for quite some time because it's a fascinating subject, but I think you can get the gist of what the project is about with what's been presented so far. What is necessary now is that you take action to help the Rio Grande Plan see its Reconnecting Communities grant through to completion. That is made easier by stopping the transfer of the Rio Grande Depot to the University of Utah, which was buried deep in the recesses of the recent Utah House Bill 2. If you live in Utah, visit the Rio Grande Plan website, contact the governor, and encourage him to use his line item veto power to cancel this property transfer. If you know someone who lives in Utah, let them know the deal. Get involved. The Rio Grande Plan has real potential, and the area of Salt Lake City that it covers could really use the help. These are good ideas. The Reconnecting Communities study should be able to run its course before decisions about change of property ownership are made. After this interview, Christian and I took Salt Lake City's Solid Tracks light rail back to Central Station where I had parked, and we collectively took the drone and GoPro shots you've been watching throughout this video. It was great talking to Christian and also Mike Christensen of the Utah Rail Passengers Association, who unfortunately wound up on the cutting room floor thanks to my technical error. We all owe Mike a big thanks for saving the interview with the world's longest USB-C cable after my GoPro battery died 5 seconds in. The Rio Grande Plan is a fascinating example of an idea someone independently had that made its way into the political machinery. I wish them all the best of luck in seeing it through, but that's all for now. Until next time, I'll see you on that big, beautiful freeway.